And I think that whole wide receiver room popped, and some guys that are on the bubble,
Yeah,
right?
strong night overall.
I tweeted yesterday, Christian Wilkerson's going to have to do a lot to unseat a lot of these guys ahead of him. But that's a guy, even dating back to last year and even in preseason, right? You were big on him last camp when we were talking in the tent, like early on, right? This guy's and he popped in the preseason and it took him a bit. Obviously, they were able to get him on the practice squad. Every
Right.
chance he's given an opportunity, he makes the most of it. Um, and whether I don't think, right? You don't want to look at hypotheticals, but with how much success he's had and more tape on him in the last 2 years, that's a guy that you're probably not going to be able to get on your practice squad, and it might be tough to keep him on the 53-man roster. Obviously, depends on how many receivers they keep, but that's a guy that a wide receiver needy team is going to be real happy to add him. That's a solid depth piece. That's a guy who, whenever his name's called, he's making a play. Dating back to last year, the Jacksonville game, and I liked what I saw too from Trey Nixon as well. Had a tough third down drop early on in the game, bounced back with a monster second half. So some of those bubble receivers, man, are making it really tough on the coaching staff, kind of heading into cut down day and as they dwindle down the roster.
Well, I'll say this. You mentioned Nixon's drop. Again, this kind of goes back to how you watch the preseason. That route, that 6 yard out on a third and
Was
five
nice.
from the slot. That's if he makes the team, that's why. It's to run
Yep.
that route. It's to fill that role. So I think if he makes that catch, you're seeing that play over and over and over and over again today. Obviously, the result's not there, but you kind of see the progress of what you want. And yeah, that group fighting for that last wide receiver spot, Trey Nixon, Christian Wilkerson. I'm going to throw a little Jordan
And
Humphrey in there
I
too.
know he had a good
He's
night
looked
too. He had
excellent.
a really good night.
They're going to make it really tough, and they're going to push some of these guys at the top of the roster. And there was the report from Doug Kide yesterday before the
About
game that,
Agholor.
that Nelson Agholor might be the odd man out, and they might look to trade him. I shared some thoughts on that, 985thesportshub.com. You can go check that out on the website right now. That's getting really interesting. And I'll say this. I know people are excited about Nixon, and I'm not saying he shouldn't be. And I know people are excited about Wilkerson, and that's fair, but I still have some questions about his hands. So I talked to little Jordan Humphrey after the game last night, and I kind of forgot he didn't play football in the spring. He was he was given a futures contract with the Saints, but was released before spring practices started. Wasn't anywhere in the spring, and then signed with the Patriots in like late June.
I was going to say it
So
was June. Yeah.
right. So I kind of asked him about, what's been different the last week because he had a couple of great practices on Monday and Tuesday. Looks good in the game. I thought that touchdown, that slot fade, that's one of Mac's best routes. When you talk about like a quarterback throwing to a specific route, Mac is excellent on that slot fade. You saw Humphrey
He
run
hit
it last
Mechie
night,
on it
executed
100
well for
times
the
in college.
touchdown. Mechie, exactly,
Yep.
exactly. So, I asked Humphrey, I'm like, what's kind of changed in the last week? And he said, I just playing ball again, getting into a rhythm. Right, he hadn't been playing, and now he's back playing football every day. He's back running. He said just running 20, 30 routes a day or more feels good. He's getting comfortable with the Patriots playbook, with the offensive system. I'm not like giving this speech to say he's going to make the team, but I will say one: if somebody does get traded, whether it's Agholor or Myers or whoever, I think he's neck and neck with Trey Nixon right now, and I think he might have more momentum than Nixon does. And I would say two, if they can somehow get him to the practice squad, he gives them tremendous value on the practice squad because if they move on from Agholor, right, they're not huge at wide receiver. They're not small, but they're not huge. But their biggest wide receiver, Devontae Parker, has an injury history. Humphrey would be a really good insurance plan if you need 2, 3, or 4 games that Parker can't play. If they can get him onto the practice squad and then elevate him, I think that would be a really interesting direction for them to go. So I don't sleep on little Jordan Humphrey. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, and back on Thornton and kind of the whole Agholor report yesterday. Um, obviously, I'm not going to go into the cap specifics. I know you're not a cap guy either. I'm not even going to try to pretend like I know because I don't. But
Yeah, every
right,
time I do
everybody
it,
knows.
Miguel yells at me. So
Yeah, and it's that aspect of it too. It's just there's so much in the weeds that you don't really know. So I mean, but obviously moving on from him does open up space. There's no question about that. But also more on like the on the field presence, right? Like I think Thornton gives you a lot of what Agholor does. He's more versatile, obviously cheaper, and somebody that you're. If it comes down to it, like who'd you rather have more targets this year, Tyquan Thornton or Nelson Agholor, right? Like I think those two are similar in a sense, but I think Thornton can give you more because of his down the field presence. He's a little bit more versatile. right? And it made sense, I guess, to if push comes to shove, you hold on to him till the end of camp, right? Because you didn't know what you were going to get out of
Right.
Thornton,
Yeah,
right?
you're
He
not
could
doing anything now.
no,
This is we're talking about after the third preseason game or maybe right before. To me, it's similar to what happened with the running back position last year, where I don't think coming in Ramondre was going to be as involved as he was,
no.
but he had such a good camp and Sony was in a contract here that it allowed them to make that move. I think the dynamic between Thornton and Agholor right now is similar to the dynamic between Ramondre and Sony Michelle last year. And I think Thornton still needs to show a little more to get all the way there, but it's kind of shaping up similarly.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, um, we talk about it all the time, but that group, like, if they played preseason 2 years ago, the COVID year, that wide receiver, like, I don't even know what names would be out there. Just to even have this conversation for guys that are 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8 on your depth chart. Like, you arguably didn't play your top four receivers last night, and I know it's preseason. I know it's not your starting quarterback. It wasn't a starting defense for most of the game, but a lot to like at that position as a whole. I think they have a lot of depth. But the interesting part about it, like I said, is how it comes up together, cut down day. How many do they keep? Who gets the nod, who's out, right? Like there's gonna be I don't want to say a surprise cut at that position because nothing would really surprise me, but these young guys that played last night are making it really tough on the coaching
Well,
staff.
I would say this: all three of them, I think, showed their legitimate NFL talents. And
Yes,
to your point of like a surprise cut, they're gonna part ways with NFL talent at that position, which is the first time in a while we can say that about the Patriots at the wide receiver position. But it's a matter of I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think Trey Nixon overall is a better player than Nelson Aguilar, right?
no,
But would you rather have Nelson Aguilar or would you for 1 year or trade Nixon for 3 more years and also you get like a fourth round pick, right? That's what it comes down to. And that gap starting to close, right? It's a little different with little Jordan Humphrey. I believe he's on a 1 year deal. But again, it's like, would you rather have one player or the player in the pick? And then again, with Nixon, you get term. So it's the gap's shrinking. The gap's shrinking, and we'll see what happens this week. It's going to be big.